Men, the most expensive mistake in dating isn't getting rejected after a few dates. It's missing the clear warning signs in your very first conversation that accurately predict the relationship disaster you'll face months later if you ignore them. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, smash that like and hype button, and drop a comment sharing which first chat red flag you ignored that later became the exact problem that ended or ruined your relationship. Red flag 1. She asks your height. Within the first few messages, when one of her first questions is asking how tall you are, or she mentions height preferences very early in the conversation, she's not just expressing a preference, she's revealing she filters men based on physical characteristics and views you through measurement criteria rather than as a complete person. This reductionist approach to evaluating humans predicts how she'll treat you throughout any relationship. What this reveals? This reveals she views men as collections of specifications to be measured rather than individuals to be known. Women who lead with height questions are demonstrating they categorize potential partners based on metrics, which means your value to her will always be measured against checklists rather than appreciated for who you are as a person. She's shopping for features, not connecting with humans. Notice how she phrases the question. If she asks directly, "How tall are you?" With no context, height is a screening criterion she applies before deciding whether you're worth continued conversation. If she mentions she prefers or usually dates men above certain heights, she's establishing that you need to meet physical specifications to be considered worthy of her attention. Watch how she responds to your answer. If you're below her stated preference and she becomes less engaged or stops responding, you've been disqualified based on a measurement. If you meet or exceed her preference and her interest noticeably increases, your height just earned you value in her eyes, revealing that physical metrics determine your worth to her. Why this predicts disaster? Someone who filters by physical measurements early will always evaluate you against external metrics rather than appreciating your character. You'll spend the relationship being compared to other men on physical attributes, income, status, and achievements. Your worth in her eyes will fluctuate based on how well you measure up to her specifications rather than being stable because she values who you are. When someone who scores higher on her metrics appears, she'll upgrade because you were always just a measurement to her. Red flag 2. She immediately complains about dating or men in general. When she uses the first conversation to complain about dating apps, express frustration with men she's encountered, or make negative generalizations about male behavior. All guys just want one thing. Dating is exhausting. Men on here are all the same. She's not venting. She's revealing negative mindset about men and dating that predicts how she'll view and treat you. What this reveals? This reveals she approaches dating and men through lens of negativity and cynicism. Women who immediately complain about dating reveal they're jaded, expect the worst, or have victim mentality where dating happens to them rather than being process they actively participate in. She's essentially telling you up front that she expects men to disappoint her, which becomes self-fulfilling prophecy because she approaches interactions assuming negativity. Notice whether she positions herself as victim of bad dating experiences or whether she takes any responsibility. If all her dating complaints position her as innocent party, repeatedly wronged by terrible men, she lacks accountability. This means when things go wrong in your relationship, you'll be the next man added to her list of people who wronged innocent her, with zero acknowledgement of her contribution to patterns. Watch whether she extends these generalizations to you. If she says, "Men always do X," and seems to be testing whether you'll do X too, she's approaching you as representative of a category she's already negative about, rather than as individual she's getting to know. This categorical thinking means you'll constantly be fighting against her preconceived notions about men rather than being seen for who you actually are. Why this predicts disaster. Someone who leads with complaints about men and dating will bring that negativity into your relationship. You'll be suspected of the behaviors she's complaining about before you've done anything wrong. You'll be expected to prove you're not like other men continuously, which is exhausting and impossible standard. Her negative expectations will poison the relationship because she approaches it assuming disappointment, creating the very problems she expects through her defensive and cynical approach. Red flag 3. She tests you with hypothetical scenarios. When she poses hypothetical questions designed to test your responses. What would you do if? How would you handle? What do you think about men who, especially early in the first conversation before you've established any rapport, she's not making conversation. She's running tests to see if you'll give the correct answers, revealing she relates through evaluation rather than genuine connection. What this reveals. This reveals she communicates through testing and manipulation rather than direct honesty. Women who test early are showing you that being with them means constant evaluation against unstated standards. You'll always be taking tests you don't know you're taking, being judged against criteria she won't clearly communicate, and dealing with someone who can't directly express needs but instead creates scenarios to see if you'll figure out the right response. Notice how she responds to your answers. If she seems disappointed by honest responses or becomes more engaged when you give answers that align with what she wanted to hear, she's not interested in knowing your authentic self. She's interested in whether you can perform according to her expectations. This performance requirement means you can't be genuine in the relationship without failing her tests. Watch whether she reveals what the correct answer was. If she explains why certain responses were wrong or right, she's explicitly grading you. If she just becomes warmer or colder based on your answers without explanation, you're being evaluated against secret criteria. Either way, you're being tested rather than being connected with as equal participant in getting to know each other. Why this predicts disaster. Someone who communicates through tests will make the entire relationship an exhausting series of unspoken evaluations. You'll never know when you're being tested, what the standards are, or whether you've passed. Honest communication will be impossible because she can't directly express needs. Instead, she'll create situations to see if you figure out what she wants. This indirect, game-playing communication style creates constant confusion, resentment, and conflict because you're always being evaluated rather than partnered with. Red flag 4. She mentions her ex multiple times. In the first conversation, when she brings up her ex-partner repeatedly in your first conversation, referencing what he did, comparing situations to that relationship, explaining how he treated her, or discussing their relationship dynamics. She's not providing context. She's revealing she's still emotionally entangled with that relationship and not actually available for genuine new connection with you. What this reveals? This reveals she hasn't processed or moved on from the previous relationship. Women who are genuinely available for something new don't repeatedly reference exes in first conversations because their mental and emotional space is available for the new person. When someone can't stop bringing up their ex, that person still occupies significant mental real estate. You're either competing with that memory or serving as audience for her processing of unfinished emotional business. Notice how she discusses the ex. If every mention positions her as victim and him as villain, she lacks accountability and will eventually cast you in the villain role when your relationship has problems. If she speaks with lingering emotion, whether anger, sadness, or even excessive warmth, those feelings reveal active attachment. True moving on looks like relative neutrality, not emotional charge. Watch whether she compares you to the ex, either favorably or unfavorably. Any comparison reveals you're being measured against someone else rather than appreciated as unique individual. If you're compared favorably, "You seem so much better than my ex," she's using you to validate that she was right about him being wrong. You're serving validation function rather than being genuinely seen. Why this predicts disaster. Someone who can't stop mentioning their ex in the first conversation is not emotionally available. You'll either be the rebound helping her process unresolved feelings, or you'll be constantly measured against the ghost of the previous relationship. You can't build genuine new connection with someone whose emotional energy is still invested in processing their past. The relationship will end when she either goes back to the ex, finds someone else to continue processing with, or finally processes enough to realize you were just a transitional figure, not someone she genuinely chose. Red flag 5. She asks invasive personal questions before building rapport. When she asks deeply personal questions in the first conversation about your past relationships, your vulnerabilities, your traumas, your family issues, or other intimate topics, before you've established any trust or connection, she's not showing vulnerability or interest. She's displaying poor boundaries, an inability to calibrate intimacy appropriately, which predicts boundary violations throughout any relationship. What this reveals? This reveals she doesn't understand appropriate boundaries around intimacy progression. Women with healthy boundaries know that personal intimacy builds gradually through earned trust. Women who ask invasive questions immediately either have no boundaries themselves and will overshare inappropriately, or they're gathering information about your vulnerabilities that can be used against you later, or they're testing whether you'll accept boundary violations. Notice whether she reciprocates with equally personal information or just extracts information from you. If she asks deeply personal questions but remains vague about her own life, she's gathering intelligence while protecting her own information. This asymmetry reveals she views the interaction as information extraction rather than mutual sharing. Watch how she uses information you share. If you answer a personal question and she later references that information in manipulative ways, uses it to make you feel guilty, or shares it with others, she's shown you that vulnerability with her is unsafe. Even if she doesn't immediately misuse information, her willingness to ask for it before earning trust predicts poor boundaries throughout the relationship. Why this predicts disaster. Someone with poor boundaries in first conversation will have poor boundaries throughout the relationship. You'll experience invasive questions about everything in your life, pressure to share before you're comfortable, and disrespect for your reasonable privacy needs. She'll overshare her own life inappropriately, creating uncomfortable intensity. She might share your private information with others. You'll never feel truly safe being vulnerable because she's already shown she doesn't respect the gradual trust building that protects healthy intimacy.